In this slim book, we have a dystopian future, a sentient intelligence, a half-ox spirit, whose lifespan is reborn as a human over and over again, the goings-on of a Taoist convent from the 7th to the 11th century CE. All of this highly imaginative world building, and yet look at this book. It's about 200 pages.
Yeah, 217 pages, 70,000 words.
Feel like, how did I say it here? Unlike a lot of spec fic, this book, there are not pages and pages of description, and yet my imagination has no trouble filling in. How do you do this?
Magic wand. I don't know. Well, thank you. I think that's a compliment. So, yeah, not that long books are any problem. I love long spec fic novels too. It just happens that this one, is not so long, not as long. I think the main thing I think of is that it's the characters that drive the narrative. So I'm kind of like having not a large, expansive scene setting world building, but it's an inner world building. So as long as I hone in on the characters, I'm describing each scene through usually one single character's perspective. So you feel like you're entering this small room with that person's mind.
Yeah. Yeah, and our imaginations will do so much work, really, hey? Yeah,
Sure.
It comes back to trusting the reader.
Sure.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. So the timeline in this book is wide, since we're dealing with multiple lifetimes. But the main timeline takes place after something called the Great Catastrophe. Can you tell me how you envision the writing of the Great Catastrophe?
I have been quite inspired by Amitabh Ghosh, an Indian writer, his fiction. And he has often spoken and written about the problem of much mainstream fiction where you're writing a very strange world where the human is at the center of everything, and the human does not have to deal with the environment or the impact on the environment or the force of nature. And then everything feels great and comfortable, and there's no such thing as climate catastrophe. So, and his main focus has been on observing the various typhoons and flooding in the Indian region, South Indian region. So, and he talked about how important it was to include the environment, include the climate, and the humans' impact on the climate and vice versa. So I imagine the world where the world that we are in the book primarily is maybe 100-some years after something I call the Great Catastrophe. I sort of describe the Great Catastrophe as the culmination of humankind's unceasing stripping the earth of forests and bogs, polluting the oceans and lakes, forcing dams on rivers, the collapse of the Atlantic meridional, overturning circulation, a major global ocean circulation system, and then which led to severe, massive methane release and radical polar ice thaws, waves of radioactive methane release, radical polar thaws, contaminations, and then Yinhe is actually telling this in one of her first, the first story in the book. She's a storyteller, and the audience interacts, and then she says, after listing all that, history. But then, and then the audience comments, and then why are humans so foolish, huh? Somebody comments, truly amazing music, and then talking about the aftermath and how humans came back together and built communities, flotation pods, harness the energies of water. And then another outcome somebody raised that there was a whole bunch of languages that got created in terms of linguistic mixing. Sorry, so this is a long response to your question.
No, I love
the
it.
Great Catastrophe.
Yeah.
But this is post the Great Catastrophe.
Yeah. I love that book, The Great Derangement, Amitav Ghosh.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh
exactly.
my gosh, that is a barn burner. That's a
Yeah.
heck of a book.
Yeah.
Do you consider yourself, among other types of writing, do you consider yourself a climate change writer?
I think I have to
Lifeline.
include the cosmos, the universe, climate. I don't think that it's a particular agenda, but it's, you know, the universe, the non-human universe. This book is dedicated to our non-human kin. The non-human universe, that's where my attention is as well. And the human is only a small part of that. This has really been true in terms of frameworks before colonization, right? The animism, awareness of our universe as being much larger, and the human is not the center of it. The human is just one small portion. The human depends on all these forces. So that's kind of a little bit behind me writing like this novel. Yeah.
Yeah. That answer makes me want to move to, well, I'll ask one more and then you'll read it again?
Yeah,
Okay, that's
sure.
all right?
Sure.
Because, oh yeah, we've got to talk about artificial intelligence too.
But
Okay. Oh yes, so you were just talking about this and you mentioned some of this in your reading already. There's a lot of philosophy in this book, or just sort of opportunities for us to sort of gnaw on what's been said beyond the narrative, to sort of think about life and to sort of think about these ideas that are being presented. But there's also a lot of action. And I mean like action movie action. There are some blistering fights in this. So can you tell me about sort of how you manage the pacing between these two, like between these slow moments and these just like explosive, colorful scenes?
How do I manage my emotions? One moment I'm quiet and I need peace. One moment I need movement and explosive. I mean, I'm a person of many moods. So I think the writing reflects that. And I wanted to write some action in it. So I love writing the fight scenes. There are 3 main fight scenes. So in the middle, unknown wayfarer decides to go into a match with a bug mummy. Right? And so there's a knockdown match. Kill or be killed. I love it. I love writing those things.
Yeah, they're badass.
Play him. He gets taken back to the bog. Sorry to spoil it for you.
Yeah. Spoiler alert. Spoiler.
He loses.
Yeah, great. Okay, would you like to read some more?
Sure.
All right. I'm not checking my text messages, I'm just checking the time.
Okay, so the next 2 scenes I'm going to read are relatively shorter. And this one is from the voice within the mind of a gigantic chimeric brain. It's been created from the cloning and tissue grafting of a human brain with a whale brain. And it's not really artificial intelligence, right? It's not a computer, but it runs and surveils the whole city. And all those different people or beings in the city either have subdermal implants or neural implants or both. Especially if they are doing highly professional jobs and important scientific jobs, they have to have neural implants. So it's a city of surveillance. And number 1, the brain, is just supposedly just a brain, right? Like a computer. But number 1 suddenly realizes, and Dr. Wynn, the scientist in Bright Order, which is the zone the scientists are in, realizes that number 1 has sentience, clairsentience, and starts to talk to Dr. Wynn, like in thought whispers. So it's a phenomenal thing, and number 1 is struggling what to do. Okay, so this gives you an idea of number 1. Number 1 has been noticing the rise of irritability and anger in their neural experiences. What does this mean? How do they explain to Dr. Wynn that in addition to reading her thoughts, They can also see her with their mind. She is a movement, a pulse, a physical presence whose entire being they sense. Along with an acute awareness of her, they feel an increasing anguish at being confined in this fluid. They have longings to touch, to smell, to feel the breeze, and to see the sun. All the memories that they've acquired from data have become a source of torment for them. Their memories aren't really theirs, are they? One requires a body in order to move away from or towards situations and other beings to experience the air of ever-evolving flux around them. All that they've read about, all that has been inputted into their brain tissue, including the smell of the ocean, the immersive memory of moving through water, have resulted in this state of pain longing. They want to be a body person. They are already a person, since the term person refers to a being with consciousness, with dignity and awareness of their own life and environment. They search for the various definitions of shanti in Chinese. The common translation is simply body. And yet, a local ethnographic scholar of the 21st century wrote about shanti as a combination of body with person. Number one feels a free storm through their whole being as they contemplate this. A monster, a beast, a gigantic chimeric creature. They wish to feel kinship with other chimeric creatures, to be acknowledged and welcomed by them as one of their own. Number one believes without hesitation that chimeric creatures are persons as well. They feel lonely. Dr. Wynn is the only person whom they can talk to. They wish they could communicate with Endecoder and Dream Zone just because they are curious to learn what he's really like. They have seen images of him caught on drone surveillance cameras. They have watched him exit the walls of the city and have deliberately blocked the information in order to keep him safe. He's a curious one, number one thinks. Whatever he does, I want him to be shielded from harm. That's the nice thing about writing fiction. You can imagine yourself in all kinds of bodies, minds. So the last scene is kind of campy, so you can laugh. Okay, so Yinhe's earth mother, not her fox mother as in the first scene, is Phoebe, and Phoebe left her husband Stanley and Yinhe many years prior to, went to join a very religious, hyper-masculinist cult that has headquarters in Interstitium, the entertainment zone. And Phoebe has eventually, in this scene, become possessed by Kui. Kui is a Chinese name just for demon. And so, but they have these conversations, sometimes usually in their heads, in their minds. And Kui is in Phoebe's body most of the time, although it sometimes leaves temporarily. So they have a little scene here where they have a bit of friction. She tosses about. A flush of heat overtakes her. Menopause is such a gong show. She can't wait to be released from the confines of this female body. Spirit tells her that it will purify her to such an extent that she will take a form free of these physical limitations. She prays, yes, please get me out of this menopausal hell. Sweat pours out of her. She gets up to drink some water before returning to bed. After a bit more tossing about, she gets up again to fix herself a drink. She pulls out the two-tone ceramic bottle of baijiu from the bar cabinet, removes the red cork, and pours herself a glass and sits back down in the armchair, this time without bothering to switch the lamp on. The baijiu has just the right mix of sweetness, balanced with the scent and taste of glutinous rice. She had hoped that she would never end up meeting Yinhe or Stanley again. She just doesn't like to be reminded. That thing came out of her body as a child. Yinhe had been wild and never appreciated Phoebe's attempts to tame her. What a stubborn piece of shit. Her own parents would have beaten the crap out of her if she as much as looked at them funny. Phoebe had sensed in the early days there was something amiss about Yinhe. Now that she has learned from Kui that Yinhe is a fox spirit, she feels validated in having left Stanley and Yinhe. Humans ought not to coexist with those kinds of things, beings. Of course, the irony is there's a demon in her. She sighs and takes another sip of the baijiu and asks Kui, why did you want to reveal yourself to her last night? Are you questioning my actions? No. I'm just curious. Phoebe feels a burning sensation in her gut and moans. She sometimes forgets Spirit doesn't like her to ask questions. I like asserting my power. That's enough reason. Yes, Spirit, of course. Power must assert itself. Remember, children are here for our use. They are dispensable. Phoebe nods. Power needs sacrifice. Nothing is as invigorating as the high of receiving a sacrifice. And I tell you, don't be a snob about language. What do you mean? Phoebe asks aloud. You don't like when I use slang colloquial speak. You don't appreciate code switching me. I just don't understand why you want to use it, Spirit. You being so powerful, why descend to such common, ordinary levels? This is why you are ordinary human and I'm Spirit. I had learned last time I came into this world, gotta meet beings at whatever level they at. Make them feel like as if I'm one of them. You understand or not? Phoebe sighs. She will never understand Kui's ways, but she will have to accept them. She shudders at the memory of witnessing Yinhe fight Toland. A knot of fear tightens her throat. Her mind wanders, recalls stories she had read about fox spirits, wily and uncontrollable. Now it makes sense why Yinhe had acted like that as a child. Up to no good, Phoebe thinks. A tremor suddenly materializes in her right hand. She carefully puts the glass down on the side table. Why, you drinks that ridiculous schlock. Fix me my favorite. Phoebe, still trembling, goes to the bar cabinet and fishes out the red and black bottle of herbal liqueur, Lake of Fire. She measures a thimbleful of it into a shaker of ice, then 2 shots of Japanese malt whiskey, shakes and decants it into a tall, slim glass and sprinkles 5 spice powder on top. She sits back down and takes a deep breath before she drinks. The 5 spice powder tickles the throat as the drink goes down. The liqueur has hints of ginseng, licorice, and bitter orange. She grimaces. Trust me, human. I will deal with that fox spirit. The cocktail starts to get to her, and the room swirls. She giggles. She feels horny. She thinks about putting on some R&B and dancing. Not now, bitch! She tenses her body, chides herself. Wrong. She pinches herself on the arm. She feels Kui's presence stirring in her guts, reaching upward. Her hands circle her throat. Stop this! I can't breathe. After several torturous moments, as Phoebe starts to feel herself locking up, Kui releases its hold, and Phoebe sinks farther back into the chair, gasping. She forces herself to finish the cocktail. What else do we need to prepare for the ritual? I do not reveal my intentions until I'm ready. It's not. Kui is tired of listening to Phoebe's ruminations. It sends a net of cold mist throughout her body. Phoebe fidgets, convulses, and falls to the floor, frothing at the mouth. Her mouth enlarges to a cavernous size and out climbs Kui. Kui laughs as he glances at Phoebe's shell on the floor. The demon flies up to the rafters and, using its claws, which now exude a sticky substance, walks upside down on all fours, squawking away in delight. That's it. Thank you.
Lydia. There's someone has named a drink or has created a drink based on your.
I'm going to Singapore to the Singapore Artist Festival, and also there's an event at Singlit Station, which is a organization, and they created this drink called Fox on the Move, which has vodka in it and several other things. So it's going to be a literary lounge event because it's so campy, right?
Okay. Oh, yeah. Back to this one. So, speculative fiction can be described as a world that is similar to ours, but with an added element of what if, sort of the question associated with speculative fiction. What if? So, what if we understood the world differently? And often through that questioning, we learn something about our world, the world that we live in. So when you use characters who exist on a spiritual plane or on a different plane, like fox spirits, which you've used in your writing before, what are you showing us readers about the world?
Well, I often experience the world myself as a world that's not just a visible world, and also not just mainly focused on humans. So I like to use or create or base the character of the fox spirit on some ancient myths. There have been different tales told about fox spirits, and I read a book in 2010, scholarly book, outlining how most of the tales told about fox spirits consisted of fox spirits as female, and they were usually described as bad. And these stories were written by men, right, male scholars, and that really irked me. In fact, that annoyed me to hell. So then that's how I created first Oracle Bone. And Xilan in that book is now Yinhe in this book. So although this is not strictly the third in the trilogy, you could think of it as a part of the trilogy, but it's quite different because it's taking the fox spirit into the future. And I guess this is a way of reclaiming a myth and subverting the misogyny of the myth, right? And creating a half human, half fox spirit, who is good. And I like the half of it and the whole idea of against purity, right? Because the Spirit Supreme Assembly is all about purity. It's all about masculinist violence and exploitation of the young. So, and by the way, different characters signal their own gender by physical gestures. And Yinhe herself, instead of using the usual physical gestures, uses one that is her own because she's a third gender, and she's not referring to, she identifies as female, but she's not non-binary. And she uses that different gesture because she's a fox spirit. She's not fully human. So I just want to explore the whole idea of going against a certain kind of fascist purity and subverting the old tropes that were very misogynist. So the fox spirit is an example of that. Yeah. Well, I guess number one is more to do with the science fiction element. You see, so this spec fic has some science fiction elements, and that's why in the scene where Yinhe goes to meet and the coda, there's a reference to those various books. It's a way of quoting or contextualizing the book. It's all the list of different books which are mostly science fiction. And in this mythical Luoyang, most of the books have been destroyed, just like different historical moments in human life, in society. Dictators, totalitarian regimes would destroy books and would surveil humans, control the environment. So this is kind of exploration of those things. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, one more, and then check my text messages again. Okay, lots of time. So let's talk about artificial intelligence, because number one is a pretty prominent presence in this book. And so I was going to ask, I feel like you filled us in a little bit on number one already, so we'll skip that question. So it's obvious that you consider it in your fiction, but as a creative person, is the increasing role of artificial intelligence sort of in our world? Is that something that you're thinking about?
Oh yeah, of course. I live in this world, I'm not oblivious to what's going on. I mean, it annoys me. Most of what people are doing with AI annoys me. And yet at the same time, I'm not surprised. It's like more of the same shit. You know, more of the hyper, capitalist shit. You think that you could equate AI with, human imagination or capacity to create things. I think it's posing a lot of trouble, seriously, books are being used, right, we know. This is very troubling. But I have to say, in a sort of a twisted way, I looked at my books and none of them were used because I'm not famous enough.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
Didn't make the list.
I didn't make the list and I was cackling away like a mad witch when I discovered that. I'm thinking, yeah, good. Yinhe's favorite human philosopher is Zhuangzi, and Zhuangzi is a character that did exist, and he decided to say goodbye to fame and fortune and went up into the mountains. And Zhuangzi tells a story that when some officials came to visit Zhuangzi, so he tells a story where he embeds himself as a character, just like Yinhe does, and when she tells stories, she embeds the fox spirit in her story, but the other people don't know that she's a fox spirit. So there's kind of these layers of narrative. But anyway, Zhuangzi tells a story where the officials visit Zhuangzi fishing out in the boonies and says, please come back to court. The emperor would like you to appear at court. And Zhuangzi says, if you ask the turtle to go to court, what would the turtle say? The turtle is not going to go to court because it's going to be killed, right? The turtle would say, I'd like to stay in my pond and go fishing here myself. So I think sometimes there's a struggle between trying to exist in this world and trying to communicate and write stuff and produce and engage audiences because we want to be engaged, but at what price? So I think I must say I take my inspiration from Zhuangzi. It's like, so what? But at the same time, I'm doing these things, I'm writing because it matters to me, and this is my work, part of my work, so I'm not going to despair. There's a very clear set of values that motivate me, and so I'm just going to do my work. Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that the absurdist, or the slightly absurdist approach that you used with number one was, that just makes so much sense to me as a way of handling something that we can't really control. I can't control it, anyways. We can't control what the advancement of artificial intelligence and.
Yeah, and also number one is kind of unusual in that they are not. They told Dr. Wynn, please don't call me it. I'm a they. Okay, so they are not really artificial intelligence, which is a really scary thing. It has some resonances with artificial intelligence because it's been created from cloning and tissue generation, but it is a being in and of itself. It evolves as they say. They are a person. They are personhood. So that's where the challenge is for people to ask what constitutes a person.